Some nights test who we truly are when no one is watching. For Dorian, a struggling single father barely keeping his world together, that night arrived with desperate knocking at his door during a violent storm. A young woman stumbled inside, bloodied and shaking, whispering through tears, "Please, help me." Without hesitation, Dorian knelt beside her, gripping her trembling hands, promising her safety, even though he had little to offer. He guided her to a hidden corner of his small home as thunder rolled overhead. Through the long hours that followed, she revealed fragments of a terrifying ordeal. But who was hunting her, and why did she choose his door? Before we continue, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning light filtered through threadbare curtains in Dorian's small kitchen, casting soft shadows across the worn linoleum floor. He stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, with the practiced ease of a man who had made breakfast alone for 3 years. The house smelled of butter and maple syrup, familiar scents that filled the spaces where conversation used to be. "Penny, sweetheart, breakfast is ready," he called up the narrow staircase. Small feet padded across the ceiling above him, and moments later, his 8-year-old daughter appeared in the doorway, her dark hair still tangled from sleep. She wore her favorite pajamas, the ones with yellow stars that were getting too small, but she refused to give up. "Did you make the pancakes with the chocolate chips?" Penny asked, climbing into her chair at the small wooden table. "Would I forget?" Dorian smiled, placing a plate in front of her. "What kind of Saturday would it be without chocolate chip pancakes?" Penny grinned, and for a moment Dorian saw Annie in that smile. The way her eyes crinkled at the corners, the dimple on her left cheek. 3 years hadn't dulled the resemblance or the ache it brought. He sat across from her with his own plate, watching as she drowned her pancakes in syrup. The kitchen was small, the table scarred from years of use, the chairs mismatched. But it was theirs, and he'd fought hard to keep it after Annie died. "Dad, can we go to the library today?" Penny asked between bites. "Mrs. Caldwell said they got new books about space." "We can do that," Dorian said, "after I finish the Henderson's cabinet. Shouldn't take more than a couple hours." Penny nodded, accustomed to her father's schedule, a patchwork of jobs that kept them fed but left little room for extras. Dorian worked as a mechanic at Bruno's garage during the week, and on weekends he took carpentry jobs. Every dollar mattered when you were raising a daughter alone. After breakfast, while Penny watched cartoons in the living room, Dorian retreated to the small desk in the corner of his bedroom. He pulled out a worn leather journal from the drawer, its cover soft with age and handling. Inside, the pages were filled with his handwriting, some entries neat and measured, others scrawled in grief. He opened to a blank page and wrote the date, October 10th. "Annie, Penny asked about you again last night. Wanted to know if you could see her from heaven. I told her yes, that you're always watching over her. I hope that's true. I hope you see how beautiful she's becoming, how smart, how kind. She has your heart." He paused, pen hovering over the page. "Some days are harder than others. Today feels heavy, like something's coming. Maybe it's just the weather, storm rolling in from the west. Or maybe it's this loneliness that never quite goes away, no matter how busy I keep myself." A knock at the door interrupted his writing. Dorian closed the journal and went downstairs, finding Mrs. Caldwell on his porch with a covered dish. "Morning, Dorian," she said, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. "Made too much casserole last night. Thought you and Penny might like it for dinner." Mrs. Caldwell had been their neighbor for 15 years, had known Annie, had held Dorian when he sobbed at the funeral. She was 73, sharp as a tack, and had appointed herself as their unofficial guardian. "You're too good to us," Dorian said, accepting the dish. "Thank you." "Nonsense, that's what neighbors do." She peered past him into the house. "How's our girl this morning?" "Good. Wants to go to the library later. Smart child. Takes after her mother." Mrs. Caldwell's eyes softened. "You doing all right, Dorian? You look tired." "I'm fine. Just a lot of work lately." She studied him with the kind of perception that came from decades of reading people. "You take care of everyone else, but who takes care of you?" "I manage," he said gently. She nodded, knowing not to push. "Well, you know where I am if you need anything, any time, day or night." After she left, Dorian spent the morning at the Henderson house, installing custom cabinets in their kitchen. The work was meditative, measuring, cutting, fitting pieces together with precision. His hands were calloused and scarred from years of labor, but they were steady and sure. At the garage where he worked, Bruno often joked that Dorian could fix anything except his own loneliness. Bruno was his best friend, had been since high school, and was one of the few people who understood the depth of what Dorian had lost. By early afternoon, Dorian and Penny were at the library, a small brick building at the center of their town. Whitmore Falls was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where people still waved from their porches and stopped to chat at the grocery store. Population 3,200, most of them over 50, the young people having moved away for jobs and opportunities. Penny disappeared into the children's section, while Dorian browsed the shelves aimlessly. He found himself in the biography section, pulling out a book about a man who'd lost everything and rebuilt his life. He wondered if that was possible, if you could truly rebuild, or if you'd just learned to live with the empty spaces. "Find anything good?" the librarian, Carol, asked as he checked out. "For Penny," he said, holding up 3 books about astronomy. "She wants to be an astronaut. Annie would be proud," Carol said softly. Everyone in Whitmore Falls remembered Annie. She'd been a teacher at the elementary school, had touched dozens of lives. Her illness had been swift and merciless. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed in March, gone by July. Dorian had held her hand at the end, had promised to take care of their daughter, had watched the light leave her eyes. That evening, after dinner, Mrs. Caldwell's casserole, which was excellent, Dorian sat on the porch while Penny did homework at the kitchen table. The sky was darkening, clouds rolling in thick and heavy. The weather report had called for severe storms overnight. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos. Annie laughing at their wedding, Annie pregnant with Penny, Annie holding their newborn daughter with tears of joy streaming down her face. He'd looked at these pictures 1,000 times, had memorized every detail, but he still looked because it was the only way to see her anymore. Bruno's truck pulled up, and his friend climbed out carrying a 6-pack of root beer. Dorian didn't drink alcohol. Hadn't since Annie got sick. "Thought you might want company," Bruno said, settling into the chair beside him. "Always," Dorian said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the storm clouds gather. Bruno was a big man, barrel-chested and bearded, with hands like hammers and a heart twice as large. "You ever think about dating again?" Bruno asked eventually. "No," Dorian said simply. "It's been 3 years, brother. Annie wouldn't want you to be alone forever." "I'm not alone. I have Penny. You know what I mean." Dorian was quiet for a long moment. "I had my great love. Some people don't even get that. I'm not looking for another one." Bruno nodded, respecting the boundary. "Fair enough, but you know I worry about you." "I know, and I appreciate it." They talked about lighter things after. That, the garage, Bruno's attempts at online dating, the high school football team's losing streak. Normal things, everyday things, the kind of conversation that filled life between the big moments. After Bruno left, Dorian tucked Penny into bed, reading her a chapter from one of her new library books about black holes and distant galaxies. Her eyes grew heavy and she yawned. "Dad?" she murmured sleepily. "Do you think Mom can see the stars from heaven?" "I think she can see everything, sweetheart. All the stars, all the planets, all the beautiful things in the universe. And us, especially us." She smiled and closed her eyes. Dorian kissed her forehead and turned off the light, leaving her door cracked open the way she liked. Downstairs, he returned to his journal, writing by the light of a single lamp. "The storm's coming, Annie. I can feel it in my bones. Not just the weather, something else. Maybe I'm being foolish, seeing omens where there are none. But I learned to trust my instincts when you got sick, when I knew something was wrong before the doctors found it." He paused, listening to the wind beginning to pick up outside. "I promise I'm taking care of her. Our Penny." She's everything good about both of us. She's curious like you were, kind like you were. Sometimes I worry I'm not enough, that she needs more than a tired mechanic for a father. But I'm doing my best. That's all I can do." Thunder rumbled in the distance, and rain began pattering against the windows. Dorian closed his journal and set it aside, then checked all the locks on the doors and windows, a nightly ritual born from the responsibility of being the only thing standing between his daughter and the world. He sat in his armchair and tried to read, but his mind wandered. The house creaked in the wind, familiar sounds that usually comforted him. Tonight they felt different, charged with tension he couldn't explain. At 10 o'clock, he checked on Penny. One more time, she was sleeping peacefully, her small chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. He stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her, feeling the fierce, protective love that had become the center of his existence. Back downstairs, Dorian made himself tea and stood at the kitchen window, watching the storm intensify. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the empty street. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against the roof. He thought about his life, about the choices that had led him here. He'd never imagined being a widower at 42, never imagined raising a daughter alone. But life didn't ask what you imagined. It just unfolded day by day, and you either met it or you didn't. He'd chosen to meet it. For Penny, for Annie's memory, for himself. The wind howled, and somewhere down the street a trash can clattered across pavement. Dorian finished his tea, rinsed the cup, and prepared to go to bed. He was halfway up the stairs when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. Knocking. Desperate. Frantic knocking at his front door, Dorian froze on the staircase, his hand gripping the railing. The knocking came again, harder this time, urgent and desperate. Through the small window beside the door, lightning flashed, briefly illuminating a figure hunched against the storm. Every instinct told him to be cautious. It was nearly 11 at night, the storm was raging, and unexpected visitors at this hour meant trouble. But something in the frantic rhythm of that knocking, something human and terrified, pulled him forward. He reached the door and called through it. "Who's there?" Her voice, female and breaking with fear, answered, "Please, please, I need help. Please open the door." Dorian glanced up the stairs toward Penny's room, then back at the door. He unlocked it and pulled it open against the wind. The young woman practically fell into his arms. She was drenched, her clothes torn and muddy, her dark hair plastered to her face. But it was the blood that made Dorian's breath catch, a gash across her forehead, her hands scraped raw, dark stains on her shirt that the rain hadn't washed away. "Please," she gasped, looking up at him with wild, terrified eyes. "Please don't let them find me." Dorian caught her as her knees buckled, her weight slight against him. He looked past her into the storm-darkened street, saw nothing but rain and shadow, then quickly pulled her inside and shut the door, locking it behind them. "You're hurt," he said, steadying her. "Let me—" "No time," she interrupted, gripping his arm with surprising strength. "They're looking for me. They'll kill me if they find me. Please, you have to help me." Up close, Dorian could see she was young, mid-20s perhaps, with sharp features now twisted in fear. Her eyes darted to the windows, to the stairs, searching for threats or escape routes. "Okay," Dorian said calmly, the same voice he used when Penny had nightmares. "You're safe here, but I need to know who's looking for you. I can't—" Her voice broke. "I can't tell you. It'll put you in danger." "I think I'm already in danger just by opening my door," Dorian said gently. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Camilla. I'm Dorian." "Let me help you, Camilla. But first, we need to get you cleaned up and see how badly you're hurt." She nodded shakily, and he led her toward the small bathroom off the kitchen, moving quietly to avoid waking Penny. In the bathroom's harsh light, the damage was worse than he'd thought. The gash on her forehead was deep, her left eye was swelling, and when she winced trying to sit on the edge of the tub, he knew her ribs were injured. "I need to clean these wounds," Dorian said, pulling out his first aid kit, well stocked from years of raising an active child. "This might hurt." "I don't care," Camilla said, but she flinched when he dabbed antiseptic on her forehead. As he worked, Dorian noticed other details. Her clothes, though torn and dirty, were quality. Expensive jeans, a tailored blouse. On her left wrist, partially hidden by her sleeve, was a silver medical bracelet. He gently pushed the fabric back to see it better. The bracelet was engraved, Patient ID 4472B, Riverton Memorial Hospital. "That's 2 states away," Dorian said quietly.
"How did you get here?"
Camilla's eyes filled with tears. "I ran. For 3 days, I just ran. I stole a car, then abandoned it. Walked through the woods. I didn't know where I was going. Her voice cracked. "I just needed to get away. From who?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, as if trying to decide if she could trust this stranger who'd opened his door in the middle of a storm. Her hand moved to her jacket pocket, pulling out something small and crumpled, a photograph, even water-damaged and blood-stained. Dorian could make out the image. Camilla, smiling and healthy, standing beside an older man with kind eyes and silver hair. They were in what looked like a laboratory, both wearing white coats. "That's Dr. Sutton," she whispered. He was my mentor. They killed him 2 weeks ago." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and terrible. Dorian's hands stilled in their work. "Who killed him?" "The company. Meridian Pharmaceuticals. We worked there together. He found out about—" She stopped, shaking her head. "I can't tell you more. The more you know, the more danger you're in." "Camilla," Dorian said firmly but kindly, "someone needs to know. If you're telling the truth, I am telling the truth." Her voice rose, and Dorian held up a calming hand. "I believe you," he said. "But if people are dying, if someone killed your friend, then hiding isn't enough. You need to—" A sound outside made them both freeze. The low rumble of an engine moving slowly down the street. Through the small bathroom window, Dorian saw headlights sweeping past, then stopping. Camilla went rigid with terror, her hand clutching his arm so hard it hurt. "They're here," she breathed. "Oh God, they found me." Dorian moved quickly, turning off the bathroom light and pulling her toward the kitchen. "There's a basement. Storage room in the back corner. Go down there and don't make a sound. What about you?" "I'm going to make sure they don't have any reason to search my house," he said, opening the basement door. "Go now!" She hesitated only a moment, then descended the stairs into darkness. Dorian closed the door quietly behind her and immediately began cleaning up the bathroom. Bloody towels shoved in the laundry hamper. First aid kit returned to its place, water wiped from the floor. He was hanging up a dry towel when he heard footsteps on his porch. Moving to the living room, Dorian positioned himself where he could see the front door through the window. 2 men stood on his porch, both wearing dark clothes despite the heat of summer that lingered beneath the storm. One was scanning the street while the other peered through Dorian's window. They didn't knock. They just watched, their faces obscured by the darkness and rain. Dorian's heart hammered in his chest, but he forced himself to remain still, to appear like a man who'd simply gotten up to check on the storm. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds, the men turned and walked back to their vehicle, a black sedan with tinted windows. They drove away slowly, and Dorian waited 5 full minutes before moving. He checked every window, every lock, then climbed the stairs as quietly as possible to check on Penny. She was still asleep, oblivious to the danger that had come to their door. He stood in her doorway, watching her peaceful face, and felt something shift inside him. Whatever was happening with Camilla, whatever danger she'd brought to his home, he couldn't turn his back on her now. Not when someone was hunting her like an animal. He returned downstairs and opened the basement door. "Camilla, they're gone." She emerged slowly, her face pale in the dim light from the kitchen. "They'll come back. They always come back. I should leave. I shouldn't have come here. I'm putting you in—" She looked up the stairs. "Do you have a child?" "My daughter," Dorian admitted. "She's 8. Camilla's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry." "I wasn't thinking. I just saw your light and I'll go. Right now. You can barely walk," Dorian said. "And where would you go? Back out into the storm where they're looking for you? Better than putting a child in danger. The danger's already here," Dorian said. "And you're not going anywhere until we figure out what to do. But I need you to tell me everything, Camilla. I can't help you if I don't know what we're up against. She searched his face, and something in his steady gaze, his quiet strength, seemed to reach her. She nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. I'll tell you everything. But you're not going to believe me. Try me, Dorian said, and led her to the kitchen table. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside Dorian's small house, in the circle of light from a single lamp, Camilla began to speak. She told him about Meridian Pharmaceuticals, about experimental drugs being tested on patients without proper consent, about falsified data and covered-up deaths. She told him about Dr. Sutton's discovery, his plan to go to the authorities, and his sudden, convenient death in a car accident that wasn't an accident at all. As Dorian listened, he realized that this quiet, desperate woman had stumbled into his life carrying secrets that powerful people would kill to protect. And by opening his door, by offering sanctuary, he'd made a choice that would change everything. When she finished talking, dawn was beginning to break through the storm clouds. Camilla was exhausted, her eyes red from crying, her voice hoarse from speaking. Dorian sat back in his chair, processing everything he'd heard. Then he reached across the table and took her hand. You're going to stay here, he said, until we figure out how to keep you safe and get this evidence to someone who can actually do something about it. But your daughter, I'll keep her safe too, Dorian said with quiet certainty. That's what I do. I protect the people who need protecting. For the first time since she'd stumbled through his door, Camilla's expression softened with something like hope. Why? She asked. Why would you risk everything for a stranger? Dorian thought of Annie, of the promises he'd made to her, of the man he'd chosen to be after she died. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. And sometimes that's reason enough. Morning arrived with reluctant light, filtering through grey clouds. Dorian had stayed awake the entire night, alternating between sitting with Camilla and checking the windows for any sign of the black sedan. His body ached with exhaustion, but adrenaline kept him alert. Upstairs, he heard Penny stirring. The familiar sound of her morning routine, feet hitting the floor, the bathroom door closing, water running, felt surreal against the backdrop of the night's events. I need to hide, Camilla said immediately, starting to rise from the kitchen chair. Basement, Dorian agreed. But take this, he handed her a blanket and pillow. Try to rest. You're safe here. She descended the stairs quickly, and Dorian closed the door just as Penny appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Morning. Sweetheart, he said, forcing normalcy into his voice. What do you want for breakfast? Cereal's fine, Penny said, climbing into her usual chair. She studied him with the unsettling perception children sometimes have. Dad, you look really tired. Couldn't sleep with the storm, he said truthfully. How about you? Sleep okay? Yeah, I dreamed about stars again. She poured cereal into her bowl. Can we still go to Mrs. Caldwell's later? She said she'd teach me to make cookies. Dorian's chest tightened. How could he explain that normal Saturday plans had been upended by a desperate stranger in their basement? We'll see, honey. I might need to take care of some things today. Penny frowned slightly, but didn't argue. She'd learned in the years since her mother died to read her father's moods and give him space when needed. After breakfast, Dorian settled Penny with her books in the living room, then went down to the basement. Camilla was sitting on an old couch, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, looking small and lost. I heard you with your daughter, she said quietly. She sounds sweet. She is. Dorian sat across from her on a storage box. Camilla, I need you to tell me more. Everything you told me last night was about what happened. Now I need to know what evidence you have, and who might actually believe you. Camilla reached into her jacket, the same torn, muddy jacket she'd arrived in, and pulled out a small burner cell phone. This is all I have. One contact. Someone Dr. Sutton was in touch with before he died. Who? I don't know. The contact is just saved as Guardian. Dr. Sutton told me if anything ever happened to him, I should call this number. That this person would help. Dorian examined the cheap phone. You haven't called them yet? I'm scared, Camilla admitted. What if Dr. Sutton was wrong? What if this person is part of it? The company has people everywhere, executives, lawyers, even some government regulators. That's how they've gotten away with it for so long. But you can't run forever, Dorian said gently. Eventually, you need to trust someone. Before Camilla could respond, the doorbell rang. Both of them froze, eyes locked in shared panic. "Stay here," Dorian whispered. "Don't move! Don't make a sound!" He climbed the stairs, closing the basement door carefully behind him. Through the front window, he saw Bruno's familiar truck in the driveway. Relief and anxiety mixed. Bruno was his best friend, but this was exactly the kind of complication Dorian didn't need. He opened the door. "Hey, Bruno!" "Morning," Bruno said cheerfully. Then his expression shifted to concern. "Man, you look terrible. Rough night?" "Storm kept me up," Dorian said, not moving from the doorway. "What's going on?" "Came to borrow your socket set. Left mine at the Henderson job yesterday." Bruno's eyes narrowed slightly. "You going to let me in, or are we conducting business on the porch now?" Dorian hesitated just a fraction too long, and Bruno caught it. "What's going on?" Bruno asked, his voice lower now, more serious. "Nothing. Just tired. Let me grab the socket set." Dorian moved to close the door, but Bruno put a hand on it. "Dorian, I've known you since we were 15. Something's wrong. Talk to me." "Bruno, I can't or won't." Bruno pushed past him into the house, not aggressively, but with the confidence of 27 years of friendship. He glanced around the living room, where Penny sat reading, waved to her, then turned back to Dorian. "What's going on?" Dorian looked at his friend's concerned face and made a calculation. He needed help, and Bruno was someone he trusted implicitly. But involving him meant putting him at risk too. "Not here," Dorian said quietly, gesturing toward the front porch. Outside, with the door closed behind them, Dorian spoke in a low voice. "I need you to trust me on something. I can't explain everything right now, but I need you to get that socket set and leave without asking questions." Bruno crossed his arms. "You're scaring me, brother." "I know. And I'm sorry, but the less you know right now, the safer you are." "Safer from what?" Dorian glanced at the street, at the houses around them, then back at Bruno. "I'm helping someone. Someone in trouble. Bad trouble. And there are dangerous people looking for them." Bruno's expression hardened with understanding. "Is Penny safe?" "Yes, I'm making sure of that." "Then what do you need from me?" The question was simple and direct, and it reminded Dorian why Bruno was his closest friend. No judgment, no hesitation, just an offer of help right now. "I need you to act normal. Come get your socket set, make small talk, and leave. If anyone asks, you stop by for tools, and I seem fine." "Anyone like who?" "Like men in black sedans, asking questions about strangers in the neighborhood." Bruno whistled low. "That kind of trouble." "Yeah, and you're sure about this?" "Sure it's worth the risk?" Dorian thought of Camilla's terrified eyes, of the blood-stained photograph, of Dr. Sutton who died trying to expose the truth. "I'm sure." Bruno nodded slowly. "Okay, but you call me if you need anything. Anything at all. And I mean it, Dorian. You're not alone in this." They went back inside, and Bruno made a show of getting the socket set from the garage, chatting with Penny about school, acting perfectly normal. At the door, he gripped Dorian's shoulder. "Be careful," he said quietly. After Bruno left, Dorian checked the street from the window. Everything seemed normal. Mrs. Caldwell working in her garden, the Petersons washing their car, life going on as it always did. But Dorian felt the weight of hidden danger pressing down on him. He was heading back to the basement when Mrs. Caldwell appeared at the door with a container of food. "Morning, dear," she said brightly. "Brought some muffins." "Fresh from the oven." "Mrs. Caldwell, that's very kind, but—" She stepped inside before he could finish, and her sharp eyes immediately scanned the room. "You look exhausted, Dorian. Are you feeling all right?" "Fine, just didn't sleep well." "Mm-hmm." She set the muffins on the kitchen counter, then turned to face him fully. "I saw that black car last night, driving very slowly past your house. And I saw Bruno's expression when he left just now. Something's wrong." Dorian realized he'd underestimated. Her Mrs. Caldwell hadn't survived 7 decades by being oblivious. "It's nothing to worry about," he said. "Carefully. Don't lie to an old woman, Dorian. I've known you too long." She lowered her voice. Is someone in trouble? He met her gaze and saw only concern and determination there. Yes, and you're helping them? Yes, she nodded, as if this confirmed something she already suspected. Good, that's the right thing to do. Your Annie would be proud. She patted his arm. Now, what do you need from me? Mrs. Caldwell, I'm old, not useless, and I'm certainly not blind. So tell me how I can help. Dorian felt something in his chest loosen slightly. Penny, if things get complicated, I might need someone to watch her. Someone I trust completely, of course. Any time, day or night. You know that, she studied him. This is serious, isn't it? Dangerous? It might be. Then you be careful. But don't back down if it's the right thing to do. She squeezed his hand. Sometimes good people have to stand up to bad people. That's how the world stays balanced. After she left, Dorian returned to the basement. Camilla was standing now, clearly having heard voices above. Your neighbor? She asked. Yeah, and my best friend before that. They both know something's going on, but not the details. I'm putting everyone around you at risk, Camilla said miserably. No, the people hunting you are doing that. You're just trying to survive. Dorian sat down heavily. We need to make decisions, Camilla. We can't just hide in my basement forever. I know, so let's start with that phone. We need to know who Guardian is. Camilla pulled out the burner phone, staring at it like it might explode. What if calling them makes things worse? What if not calling them means they can't help? She took a deep breath, then nodded. Okay, but not here. If they trace the call, we'll drive somewhere remote. Make the call. See what happens. Dorian stood. But first, I need to make arrangements for Penny, and we need to wait until evening. Moving around in daylight is too risky. The day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Dorian kept Penny occupied with activities, all while watching the windows, listening for cars, ready to hide Camilla at a moment's notice. He made Penny lunch, helped her with a craft project, read to her from her astronomy books. In the afternoon, Mrs. Caldwell came to collect Penny for cookie baking, sensing without being told that Dorian needed his daughter out of the house. As he watched them walk across the yard to her house, Dorian felt a fierce protectiveness rise in him. Whatever happened next, Penny had to stay safe. That was non-negotiable. 2 days had passed since Camilla arrived. 2 days of careful routines, constant vigilance, and mounting tension. Dorian had called in sick to the garage, the first time he'd done so in 3 years, and Bruno covered for him without asking questions he knew wouldn't be answered yet. In the basement, Camilla had grown restless. The physical wounds were healing, but the fear remained constant in her eyes. She paced the small space like a caged animal, jumping at every sound from above. On the second evening after Penny was asleep upstairs, Camilla finally revealed what Dorian had suspected she was hiding. There's something else, she said, her fingers worrying at the hem of her jacket. Evidence, real evidence, not just my testimony. Dorian looked up from the old laptop he'd borrowed from Mrs. Caldwell's storage, her late husband's computer from before he passed 5 years ago. What kind of evidence? Camilla's hands moved to the lining of her jacket, and she began picking at the seam with trembling fingers. After a moment, the stitching gave way, and she pulled out a small object wrapped in plastic, a USB drive. Dr. Sutton gave this to me the day before he died, she said quietly. He said if anything happened to him, I had to keep it safe. That it contained everything, proof of what Meridian was doing. Dorian took the drive carefully, as if it were made of glass. And you've been carrying it this whole time? I didn't know where else to hide it. Those first few days, running, I was terrified they'd search me if they caught me. But the jacket lining, she shrugged. It was the best I could think of. Have you looked at what's on it? No. I didn't have access to a computer I trusted, and honestly, I was too scared. Once I looked at it, once I knew exactly what was there, it would become real, all of it. Dorian plugged the drive into the laptop. The screen flickered, and a password prompt appeared. Do you know the password? Camilla nodded. Dr. Sutton told me. It's his daughter's birthday, the daughter he lost to leukemia 20 years ago. That's why he cared so much about pharmaceutical ethics. August 15th, 1992, 081592. Dorian typed it in, and the drive opened. What they found made Dorian's blood run cold. Folders upon folders of documents, medical files, each one representing a patient in Meridian's experimental drug trials. Financial records showing payments to doctors who falsified reports. Email chains between executives discussing how to cover up adverse reactions and deaths. Spreadsheets tracking the real data, the data that was never submitted to the FDA. Dorian clicked through file after file, his hands beginning to shake. Patient ID 2847, Gerald Murphy, age 63. Enrolled in trial M447 for cardiac medication. Died of heart failure 16 days after starting treatment. Official report, pre-existing condition. Email from trial coordinator. Another one down. Adjust the dosage data to show compliance with safety parameters. Patient ID 3192, Linda Chen, age 57. Enrolled in trial M551 for arthritis medication. Developed fatal liver complications. Official report, alcohol-related cirrhosis. Internal memo, family is asking questions. Legal is handling it with standard settlement and NDA. On and on it went. 47 patients in total, each one a life reduced to a case number and a problem to be managed. Oh my God, Dorian breathed. This is mass murder. Now you see why they'll kill to keep it hidden, Camilla said, her voice hollow. Dr. Sutton estimated Meridian made $700 million from these drugs before the patents expire. $700 million built on dead bodies and lies. Dorian sat back, his mind reeling. He thought of Annie, of how she'd trusted her doctors, trusted the medications they prescribed. What if one of those drugs had been from a company like Meridian? What if people like her were the ones paying the price for corporate greed? We have to get this to someone who can actually do something, he said. But who? The FDA was supposed to be monitoring these trials. Either they were fooled by the fake data or some of them were bought, Dorian finished grimly. What about the police? Local police can't handle something this big. It crosses state lines, involves federal regulations. We'd need the FBI or maybe the Department of Justice. What about that Guardian contact? Maybe they're FBI. Camilla pulled out the burner phone, staring at it with a mixture of hope and fear. Dr. Sutton said this person was insurance. Someone outside the company who understood what was happening. Then it's time to find out who they are. But before they could make the call, Dorian's own phone buzzed with a text from Bruno. Black sedan been circling the neighborhood 3 times in the last hour. I thought you should know. Dorian's jaw tightened. They were running out of time. We need to move, he said. Tonight, we make the call to Guardian. And then we figure out how to get you somewhere safe while we get this evidence to the right people. What about Penny? Mrs. Caldwell will keep her safe. I trust her with my life, with Penny's life. Within an hour, Dorian had made arrangements. Mrs. Caldwell came over, and he explained, vaguely, that he needed to help someone in an emergency and would be gone overnight. Her sharp eyes saw more than he said, but she simply hugged him and promised Penny would be fine. Penny, intuitive as always, sensed something important was happening. When Dorian knelt to hug her goodbye, she whispered, "Are you helping someone, Dad?" "Like Mom used to help people." The question nearly broke him. "Yes, sweetheart. Just like Mom." "Then it's okay," Penny said with the simple certainty of childhood. "Helping people is always okay." Near midnight, Dorian and Camilla left through the back door. Dorian had borrowed Mrs. Caldwell's older sedan, less conspicuous than his own, truck, and planned a route using backroads he'd known since childhood. They drove in silence. For the first 20 minutes, Dorian constantly checking mirrors for following vehicles. The countryside was dark, only occasional farmhouse lights breaking the blackness. "There's something I haven't told you," Camilla said finally. "About Dr. Sutton." Dorian glanced at her. "What? He wasn't just my mentor. He was—" Her voice caught. "He was kind to me in a way nobody had been before. I grew up in foster care. 12 different homes before I aged out at 18. No family, no real connections. When I started working at Meridian, Dr. Sutton took me under his wing. Taught me, encouraged me, believed in me. He was the closest thing to a father I ever had." "I'm sorry," Dorian said quietly. "Losing someone like that, He told me, right before he died, that he had something important to tell me. We were supposed to have dinner that Friday night, but Thursday he had his accident." She wiped at her eyes. "I'll never know what he wanted to say." Dorian thought of all the things left unsaid when Annie died, all the conversations they'd never have, all the moments stolen by death. Maybe it was just that he cared about you. Sometimes that's the most important thing. They continued driving until they reached an abandoned rest stop on a rarely used highway. Dorian pulled into the parking lot, killing the engine. The place was deserted, exactly what they needed. "Okay," he said. "Let's find out who Guardian is." Camilla powered on the burner phone, her hands shaking as she navigated to the single contact. She looked at Dorian, drew a deep breath, and pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered. Female, professional, controlled. "Who is this?" Camilla's voice wavered. "Dr. Sutton told me to call this number if something happened to him." A pause. Then, "Is this Camilla?" "Yes. Are you safe right now?" I think so. "I'm with someone who's helping me." "Good. Listen carefully. My name is Lydia Frost. I'm a special agent with the FBI's Whistleblower Protection Program. Dr. Sutton contacted me 6 weeks ago about irregularities at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. We were building a case when he died." Relief flooded through Camilla so powerfully she nearly sobbed. "You believe me?" "About what they're doing?" "I believe Dr. Sutton was murdered to silence him," Agent Frost said bluntly. "And I believe you're in serious danger." "Where are you?" Camilla looked at Dorian, who nodded. "About 2 hours outside Whitmore Falls. We're at—" "Don't tell me the exact location over this line," Frost interrupted. "These phones are supposed to be secure, but we can't be too careful. What matters is whether you have any evidence to support the allegations. We have Dr. Sutton's files," Camilla said. "Medical records, financial documents, emails, everything proving what Meridian did. Then we need to meet. Somewhere secure, somewhere I can get you into protective custody and secure that evidence." A pause. "But Camilla, you need to know something. Meridian hired a private security firm to find you. These aren't corporate lawyers or private investigators. These are former military and intelligence operators. They're professionals, and they're very good at what they do." Dorian took the phone from Camilla. "This is Dorian. I'm the one helping her. What do we need to do?" "Protect her until I can get there. I'm 4 hours away right now. Can you keep her hidden that long?" "I have a friend. Former Army, lives remote. We can go there." "Do it. I'll call this number back in exactly 3 hours with a meeting location. Don't go anywhere public. Don't use credit cards. Don't do anything that creates a digital trail. Understand?" "Understood. And Dorian, thank you for protecting her." Most people would have closed their door. After the call ended, they sat in silence for a moment, processing what they'd learned. "She believed us," Camilla whispered. "The FBI is actually going to help, which means we just need to stay alive for a few more hours," Dorian said. He started the engine. Time to visit Russell. Russell's cabin sat at the end of a gravel road that wound through dense forest for 3 miles. Dorian had only been there twice before, once when Russell first bought the property, and once for a quiet weekend of fishing, and remembering what it meant to have silence in your life. They arrived just past 3 in the morning. The cabin was dark, except for a single light on the porch, Russell's way of saying he was awake and aware. Before Dorian could even turn off the engine, the front door opened, and Russell stepped out with a rifle held loosely in one hand. He was in his late 50s, lean and weathered, with grey stubble and eyes that missed nothing. When he recognized Dorian's borrowed car, he lowered the rifle and waited on the porch. "Russell," Dorian said as he got out. "Sorry to show up like this. Figured you would eventually," Russell said calmly. "Heard your voice on my security system about a mile back. Come on in." The cabin's interior was sparse but fortified. Dorian noticed immediately the security cameras monitoring the driveway and surrounding woods, the reinforced doorframe, the carefully positioned furniture that offered clear sightlines to all windows. This wasn't just a cabin, it was a defensive position. Russell looked at Camilla with the assessing gaze of someone who'd spent decades evaluating threats and allies. "You're the one in trouble." "Yes, sir," Camilla said quietly. "Coffee's on," Russell said, gesturing to the kitchen. You look like you could use some. Both of you? Over the next 30 minutes, Dorian explained everything while Russell listened without interrupting. When Dorian finished, Russell was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming thoughtfully on the table. "Private security firm hunting her," Russell said finally. "That means they're organized, well-funded and motivated. They won't stop until they find her or until the evidence goes public and there's no point anymore. Agent Frost is going to call in." Dorian checked his watch. 2 hours. "She'll tell us where to meet." Russell stood and moved to a wall where military dog tags hung on a small hook beside a faded photograph. The photo showed 2 young soldiers, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning despite the desert and danger around them. Dorian recognized his younger self and Russell, 20 years ago, before grey hair and loss had marked them both. "Kandahar province," Russell said, touching the dog tags gently. "You remember?" "Every day," Dorian said. "IED took out our convoy. I was trapped in the vehicle, fuel leaking, fire starting. You came back for me, pulled me out while rounds were still coming in." Russell turned to face him. "I owe you my life, brother. So whatever you need, however this plays out, I'm with you. Russell, this isn't your fight. The hell it isn't." Russell's voice was firm, but not angry. "You carried me when I couldn't walk. Now let me carry you." The burner phone rang, cutting through the moment. Camilla answered, putting it on speaker. "It's Frost. Are you somewhere secure?" "Yes," Dorian said. "At a friend's property. Remote location. Good, here's the situation. I've arranged a meeting point, an old ranger station about 40 miles northeast of your current location. It's federal land, isolated, and I can have a team there to provide security and extract Camilla to a safe house." "When?" Russell asked. "Who's that?" Frost asked sharply. "Russell. The friend I mentioned." "Former Army," a pause. "Okay, we meet at 0600 dawn. That gives you 3 hours to get there. The ranger station is at coordinates I'm texting to this phone now. Can you find it?" Russell was already pulling out a detailed topographical map. "We'll find it. Listen carefully," Frost continued. "I have concerns about information security on my end. There may be a leak in our field office, someone feeding information to Meridian. So we keep this tight. Minimal communication, minimal exposure. You get to the ranger station. We secure the evidence. We get Camilla into protection. Clean and fast." "Understood," Dorian said. After the call ended, Russell studied the coordinates on his map, then cross-referenced them with the one on his wall. "I know this area. All logging roads will get us close. Then we hike in the last mile. Less chance of being spotted than driving straight to the front door." "You think they might be watching the ranger station?" Camilla asked. "If there's a leak in the FBI like Frost suspects, then maybe. Better to assume they are and be wrong than assume they're not and walk into an ambush." Russell moved with the efficiency of someone who'd planned operations in hostile territory before. He pulled out weapons, a rifle for himself, a handgun for Dorian, and checked them with practiced ease. "You remember how to use this?" Russell asked, handing Dorian the pistol. "It's been a while, but yeah, let's hope you don't have to." Russell gathered ammunition, a first aid kit, water bottles, and emergency supplies. "We leave in 1 hour. That gives me time to scout the approach route and you two time to rest." "I can't rest," Camilla said. "Every time I close my eyes, I see—" She stopped, shaking her head. "See what?" Dorian asked gently. "Dr. Sutton, the last time I saw him, he was leaving the lab, said he'd see me tomorrow. He smiled at me, and then—" Her voice broke. "Then he was just gone. Car accident, they said. But I knew they killed him, and I didn't know how to prove it, and I was terrified I'd be next." Russell brought her a blanket. "You did what you had to do to survive. That takes courage. Now you're almost through it. Few more hours, and you'll be safe." Dorian sat beside her on the couch. "Did Dr. Sutton have family?" "No, his wife died years ago. His daughter died as a child. He was alone, really. Except for—" She stopped, something flickering across her face. "Except for what?" "Nothing. Just he was kind to me. That's all." Russell left to do his reconnaissance, moving into the pre-dawn darkness with barely a sound. Dorian watched through the window as his friend disappeared into the tree line, impressed as always by how completely Russell could vanish when he wanted to. "He's like you," Camilla observed. Quiet strength. The kind of person who doesn't talk about helping people, just does it. Russell's been through things that would break most people, Dorian said. War, loss, trauma, but he came out the other side with his honor intact. That's rare. You talk about him with a lot of respect. He saved my life in a different way than I saved his. When Annie died, I was drowning. Couldn't see a way forward. Russell came and stayed with me for 2 weeks. Didn't try to fix anything, didn't offer empty platitudes. Just sat with me in the grief. Helped with Penny. Reminded me by his presence that life could still have purpose. They sat in silence, watching the darkness slowly give way to the deep blue of approaching dawn. Dorian thought about the day ahead, about the meeting with Agent Frost, about getting Camilla to safety. He thought about Penny, probably still asleep in Mrs. Caldwell's guest room, innocent and unaware of the danger her father was navigating. I need to tell you something, Camilla said suddenly, in case things go wrong today. In case I don't get another chance. Nothing's going wrong, but if it does, she turned to face him. Dr. Sutton left me something. More than just the USB drive. He left me a letter with his lawyer and his entire estate. I haven't been able to access any of it because I've been running, but if something happens to me, that information needs to get out. The lawyer's name is Preston Whitmore in Riverton. He has another set of evidence, the complete files, including recorded conversations Dr. Sutton made with Meridian executives. Dorian absorbed this information. A backup. Dr. Sutton was thorough. He knew they'd come after him. He just ran out of time to get everything to the authorities himself. She pulled out the blood-stained photograph, the one she'd been clutching since she arrived at Dorian's door. This was taken 3 weeks before he died. We'd just finished a successful trial for a legitimate medication, one that actually helped people. He was so happy that day. Said this is what pharmaceutical research was supposed to be about. Saving lives, not taking them. He sounds like he was a good man. The best I ever knew. She carefully tucked the photograph back into her jacket. I'm going to make sure his death means something. That those 47 patients didn't die for nothing. Russell returned as the sky was lightening, his face serious. Check the approach routes. Everything looks clear for now, but we need to move soon. The longer we wait, the more chance someone spots us. They prepared to leave, each person checking their equipment and supplies. Dorian called Mrs. Caldwell on his own phone, not the burner, and she answered on the first ring. Penny's still sleeping, she said immediately. Safe and sound. Don't you worry about her. Thank you. I can't tell you what that means to me. Just come back safe, Dorian. Whatever you're doing out there, come back to your daughter. I will, he promised, and hoped he could keep it. Russell handed Dorian a hand-drawn map showing their route to the ranger station. The map was detailed, marking terrain features, potential cover positions, and alternate extraction routes. It was the work of someone who'd planned military operations and understood the importance of contingency planning. If things go sideways, Russell said, we fall back to Point Charlie here. He indicated a spot on the map. Regroup, reassess, and use the Eastern Trail to get back to the vehicles. You think things might go sideways? Camilla asked nervously. I always think things might go sideways, Russell said. That's why they usually don't. They loaded into Russell's 4-wheel drive truck, older but well-maintained and capable of handling rough terrain. As they pulled away from the cabin, Dorian looked back at the small sanctuary Russell had built for himself in these woods and hoped they'd all make it back there safely. The drive through the forest was tense and silent. Russell navigated the old logging roads with confidence, the truck's headlights cutting through the last vestiges of night. Camilla sat in the back, clutching her jacket with its hidden evidence, her eyes scanning the woods as if expecting threats to emerge from every shadow. Dorian's hand rested on the pistol at his side, and he thought about how much his life had changed in just 3 days. From lonely single father to protector of a fugitive witness, from routine mechanic work to planning clandestine meetings with federal agents. But as he glanced at Camilla's frightened face in the rearview mirror, he knew he'd made the right choice. Some things were worth the risk. They parked the truck a mile from the ranger station, hiding it behind a collapsed barn that nature was slowly reclaiming. Russell covered it with branches and debris, making it nearly invisible from the road. "From here we walk," he said quietly, slinging his rifle across his back. "Stay close, stay quiet, and if I signal to stop, you freeze immediately." The forest was beginning to wake with birdsong as they moved through the trees. Russell led with the confidence of someone who'd navigated hostile terrain before, choosing paths that offered cover and avoiding areas where their footsteps would be too loud. Dorian stayed close to Camilla, one hand ready to steady her when she stumbled over roots or rocks. The ranger station appeared through the trees, a small log structure with a covered porch, surrounded by a clearing that made Dorian's skin crawl with exposure. There were too many angles of approach, too many places for someone to hide in the surrounding woods. Russell held up a fist, signaling them to stop. He pulled out binoculars and studied the station and surrounding area with methodical precision. "What do you see?" Dorian whispered. "Two vehicles. One's got federal plates, probably Frost. The other—" Russell's jaw tightened. "Can't tell from this angle, but something feels off." "Off how?" "Too quiet. No birds near the station. Animals know when predators are around." He lowered the binoculars. "We're not alone out here." Camilla's face went pale. "They found us." "We don't know that yet," Dorian said, but his hand moved to the pistol at his side. Russell was already moving, circling around to get a better vantage point. He gestured for them to stay put, then disappeared into the undergrowth with barely a rustle. Dorian and Camilla waited in tense silence. Minutes felt like hours. A branch snapped somewhere to their left, and they both flinched, but it was only a deer moving through the forest. Russell returned, his expression grim. "Two vehicles at the station. Frost is there with one other agent. Both look legitimate. But there are at least two men in the woods on the north side. Professional positioning. They're watching the station. Meridian's people," Camilla breathed. "That's my guess. Question is, do they know Frost is FBI, or are they just watching to see who shows up?" Dorian thought quickly. If there's a leak in the FBI, like Frost suspected, they might know she's here. Which means this could be a trap for everyone. "So what do we do?" Camilla asked, fear making her voice tight. Russell studied the terrain, his tactical mind working through options. "We need to warn Frost without exposing ourselves. And we need to get Camilla out of here before this goes hot." "I can approach from the west," Dorian suggested. "Use that rock formation for cover, get close enough to signal Frost." "Too exposed. If those men in the woods are watching with scopes, they'll spot you the moment you break cover." Russell pulled out his phone. "Better option. We use the burner to call Frost, tell her it's compromised, and set up a new meeting point." Before they could act, the decision was made for them. Two black SUVs came roaring up the road to the ranger station, and armed men poured out. 4 of them, moving with military precision toward the building where Agent Frost was waiting. "Damn it," Russell hissed. "It's happening now." Through the trees they heard shouting, Frost's voice commanding and controlled. "Federal agents, stand down." Then gunfire. The sound shattered the morning quiet, sharp cracks echoing through the forest. Dorian instinctively pushed Camilla behind a thick tree trunk as Russell brought up his rifle. "We need to help Frost," Dorian said. "We need to protect Camilla," Russell countered. "That's the mission. She'll die if we don't." More gunfire, and they heard Frost's voice again, now coming from behind the station. She and her partner were pinned down, outgunned. Russell's jaw worked as he made his calculation. Then he handed Dorian the hand-drawn map. "Take Camilla to Point Charlie, that outcropping we marked for extraction. Wait there for exactly 30 minutes. If I'm not back by then, you get her to the truck and drive to the state police barracks in Millerville. Don't stop for anything. What are you going to do?" "Even the odds." Russell checked his rifle's magazine. "I didn't spend 25 years in the army to let federal agents get murdered while I hide in the trees." "Russell, you're protecting her. I'm protecting you. That's how this works." He gripped Dorian's shoulder. 30 minutes. Then you run. Understand?" Dorian wanted to argue, but he knew Russell was right. Camilla was the priority. Her testimony, the evidence she carried, the truth about those 47 deaths. If she died here, all of it would be buried forever. 30 minutes, Dorian agreed. Then we're gone. Russell moved toward the ranger station with the fluid efficiency of a combat veteran. Within moments, he disappeared into the forest, leaving Dorian and Camilla alone, with the sound of gunfire in the distance. "Come on," Dorian said, taking Camilla's arm. "We need to move." They headed east, using the terrain for cover as Russell had taught them. Behind them, the gunfire intensified. Russell had engaged. Dorian heard the distinctive crack of his friend's rifle. Different from the rapid reports of the automatic weapons Meridian's people were using. Point Charlie was a rocky outcropping that offered good visibility and defensive position. They reached it after 15 minutes of hard climbing, both breathing heavily. From here, they could see part of the ranger station through the trees, though the details were obscured by distance and foliage. Camilla was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "This is my fault. All of this, Dr. Sutton, Agent Frost, your friend Russell, this is Meridian's fault," Dorian said firmly. "They're the ones who chose profit over lives. They're the ones who killed to cover it up. You're just trying to expose the truth, but people are dying because of me. People died because of what Meridian did. You're trying to make sure they don't die for nothing." He checked his watch. 15 minutes left. The gunfire had slowed to sporadic shots. Dorian strained to hear anything that might tell him what was happening, whether Russell was okay, whether Frost had survived. "Dorian," Camilla said suddenly, her voice strange. "There's something I need to tell you. About Dr. Sutton, about why he protected me the way he did." "What do you mean?" She pulled out the blood-stained photograph again, and this time Dorian looked at it more carefully. The older man, Dr. Sutton, had his arm around Camilla's shoulders. The way they stood together, the easy familiarity in their posture. "He wasn't just my mentor," Camilla said quietly. "He was my father." "My biological father?" Dorian stared at her. "What? I didn't know until 3 months ago. He told me then, said he'd been looking for me since I aged out of foster care, that he'd given me up for adoption when I was a baby because he was young and scared, and he'd regretted it every day since. When he finally found me and saw I was working at Meridian, he got me into his department so he could watch over me. Protect me. Did he tell you he was investigating the company?" "Not at first. He didn't want me involved. But I started noticing things, irregularities in the trial data, patients who disappeared from the studies. When I confronted him, he finally told me everything, made me promise to run if anything happened to him." Her voice broke. "He died protecting me, protecting this evidence. And I never got to tell him. I never got to tell him I understood, that I forgave him for giving me up, that I was glad he found me." Dorian felt his chest tighten with sympathy. He thought of Penny, of how desperately he loved her, of how he'd die to protect her. Dr. Sutton had done exactly that. "He knew," Dorian said gently. "A father knows when his child understands. Trust me on that." 10 minutes left on Russell's deadline. The forest had gone quiet. No more gunfire, no more shouting. Just whined through the trees and the distant call of birds, returning now that the violence had ceased. "What if he doesn't come back?" Camilla whispered. "Then we follow the plan. We get to the truck, drive to the state police, and we make sure this evidence gets out." Dorian pulled out the USB drive from Camilla's jacket where she'd stashed it. "Your father didn't die for nothing. We're going to make sure of that." 5 minutes. Dorian kept checking his watch, willing time to slow down. Willing Russell to appear through the trees with that confident smile that said everything was under control. 2 minutes. "We should start moving toward the truck," Camilla said. If we wait until the deadline, a rustle in the undergrowth made them both freeze. Dorian raised the pistol, finger on the trigger, heart hammering. Russell emerged from the trees, blood on his sleeve, but moving under his own power. Behind him, supporting each other, were Agent Frost and her partner, both injured but alive. "Deadline extended," Russell said with a tired smile. "We've got company coming, and they're not friendly." Agent Frost looked at Camilla with intense relief. "You're alive." "Thank God." Then her expression hardened. "But we have a serious problem. The leak wasn't in my office. It was my partner." The agent beside her, young, clean-cut, bleeding from a shoulder wound, shook his head weakly. I'm sorry. They threatened my family. I didn't know what else to do. They're already calling in reinforcements, Frost continued. More men, better equipped. We have maybe 20 minutes before this whole area is swarming with them. Then we run, Russell said simply. Now! They moved through the forest as quickly as the terrain allowed, Russell leading and Agent Frost bringing up the rear despite her injuries. Her compromised partner, Agent Wesley, struggled to keep pace, guilt and pain etched across his young face. I never meant for anyone to get hurt, Wesley gasped as they half ran through the undergrowth. They said they'd just talk to her, convince her to stay quiet. I didn't know they'd— Save it, Frost snapped. Right now, I need you to move faster, or you're going to get us all killed. They reached Russell's truck and he immediately began removing the camouflage. Dorian helped, working with frantic efficiency while Camilla kept watch on the road. We can't all fit in one vehicle, Russell observed. Take my SUV, Frost said, tossing keys to Dorian. It's faster anyway. Wesley and I will take your truck, head in a different direction. Split their attention. You're in no condition to drive, Russell argued. I'll manage. Getting that evidence to safety is more important than— Camilla's sharp intake of breath stopped the conversation. Wait, everyone stop. They turned to look at her. She was standing very still, her hand pressed against her jacket pocket, not the one with the USB drive, but the other side. There's something else, she said, her voice shaking. Something I didn't know about until now. She reached into her pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was sealed, slightly bent from days of being carried, and it had her name written on it in careful handwriting. Where did that come from? Dorian asked. It's been in my jacket this whole time. I never checked this pocket. I was so focused on the USB drive, on running. I didn't even notice. She turned it over in her trembling hands. This is Dr. Sutton's handwriting. Open it, Frost urged. Camilla broke the seal with shaking fingers and pulled out several folded pages. As she read, her face went through a series of transformations: confusion, shock, understanding, and finally overwhelming grief. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, he knew. He knew everything. What does it say? Dorian moved closer, reading over her shoulder. The letter began simply, My dearest Camilla, if you're reading this, then I've failed to protect you, and I'm probably gone. Dr. Sutton's words laid out the truth with painful clarity. He explained how he'd given her up for adoption. 26 years ago, a desperate decision made by a young researcher who'd just lost his wife to complications in childbirth and couldn't see a way to raise a child alone while grieving. I spent 20 years looking for you, the letter read. When I finally found you, saw you'd grown into this brilliant, compassionate woman, I wanted to tell you immediately. But I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me for abandoning you. Afraid I'd disrupt the life you'd built. So I did the cowardly thing. I simply arranged to have you hired at Meridian, pulled strings to get you into my department, and pretended to be nothing more than a mentor. The letter continued, revealing that Dr. Sutton had discovered Meridian's illegal trials 6 months before his death. He'd been gathering evidence systematically, knowing it would eventually cost him his life. But here's what you must know, Camilla. I'm not just leaving you evidence of corporate crimes. I'm leaving you everything. My entire estate, my savings, my house, my complete research files. I've arranged everything with my lawyer Preston Whitmore in Riverton. More importantly, I'm leaving you the truth about who you are and where you came from. Camilla's hands shook as she continued reading. In Preston's office, there's a safety deposit box. Inside are 3 things: a complete backup of all the evidence against Meridian, including recorded conversations I had with executives where they explicitly acknowledged the deaths and the cover-up. Second, there's a letter I wrote to you on the day you were born, the letter I should have given you years ago, explaining why I had to let you go. And third, there's a USB drive with video messages I recorded over the past 3 months. Messages where I finally say everything I was too afraid to tell you in person. The letter's final paragraphs made Frost lean in closer, her expression intensifying. The evidence in that safety deposit box is comprehensive enough to bring down not just Meridian's executive team, but also the FDA officials who accepted bribes to overlook the trial irregularities, and the congressional representatives who blocked investigations in exchange for campaign contributions. This isn't just a corporate scandal, Camilla. It's a systemic failure that reaches into the highest levels of government. The corruption goes that high, Russell said grimly. Camilla read the final lines aloud, her voice breaking. I'm sorry I waited so long to tell you that you're my daughter. I'm sorry I won't be there to watch you grow older, to know your children if you have them, to simply be your father in all the ways I wanted to be. But I'm so proud of you. So impossibly proud. Whatever happens, please know that finding you again, even briefly, was the greatest gift of my life. You were worth everything. Love always, Dad. The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Camilla clutched the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Agent Frost was the first to speak, her voice urgent. Preston Whitmore, Riverton. We need to get to that safety deposit box. That's 3 hours from here, Russell said. And Riverton's a city, harder to hide, more cameras, more ways for them to track us. But if that evidence is as comprehensive as Dr. Sutton claims, Frost argued, it's our insurance policy. Even if something happens to the USB drive you're carrying, the case doesn't die with us. There's another problem, Agent Wesley said quietly, earning him sharp looks from everyone. The bank. If Preston Whitmore is Dr. Sutton's lawyer, Meridian knows about him. They'll have been watching that office, that bank, waiting for Camilla to show up. He's right, Frost admitted reluctantly. This could be exactly what they're expecting. Dorian studied the letter in Camilla's hands, thinking through the implications. Dr. Sutton was a thorough man. If he knew they'd killed him, knew they'd come after Camilla, he must have planned for that. The question is, what safeguards did he put in place? Camilla wiped her eyes and reread part of the letter. He says here, Preston knows you're my daughter. He'll verify your identity through a method only you and I would know. What does that mean? A question only you could answer, Russell suggested. Something personal that couldn't be faked. But I didn't know he was my father until 3 months ago, Camilla said. What shared knowledge could we possibly... She stopped, her eyes widening. The photograph. She pulled out the blood-stained picture again. This was taken on August 15th. He made such a big deal about that date, said it was special. I didn't understand why at the time, but now August 15th is the password for the USB drive, Dorian remembered. The birthday of his daughter, who died of leukemia. That's what he told everyone, Camilla said, understanding flooding her face. But there was no other daughter. It was always me. August 15th, 1998. That's my birthday. He used my birthday as the password because I was the daughter he'd lost, the one he was trying to protect. Frost nodded slowly. So when you go to Preston Whitmore, he'll ask you something only Dr. Sutton's daughter would know. And you answer with that date, which means we're going to Riverton, Dorian said. Into a potential trap, Wesley added weakly. Into a trap we'll be ready for, Russell corrected. He looked at Agent Frost. What's your assessment? Can we make it work? Frost considered, her tactical mind clearly working through scenarios. If we're smart about it, yes. We don't go in blind. We scout the location, identify threats, create multiple exit strategies. We use the fact that they're expecting us to our advantage. How? Camilla asked. They expect a desperate woman on the run. Instead, we give them a coordinated operation. Frost's expression hardened with determination. This is still my case, and I'm not letting corporate killers win because one of my agents was compromised. We get that evidence, and we expose everyone involved. Russell pulled out his map again, this time marking routes to Riverton. 3 hours if we take the highway, or if we stick to back roads. Back roads, Dorian said immediately. Slower but safer. Agreed, Frost said. She looked at Wesley. You're coming with me. You're going to help me fix this mess, even if it means you spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Wesley nodded miserably. I'll do whatever I can. My family is being moved into protective custody as we speak, Frost said, pulling out her phone. I called it in the moment you confessed. They're safe, which means you have no more excuses. Now you help us finish this." They split into two vehicles as planned. Russell, Dorian, and Camilla took Frost's SUV. Agent Frost and Wesley took Russell's truck, planning to take a different route and meet them on the outskirts of Riverton. As they drove away from the ranger station, Camilla held her father's letter, reading it over and over, as if trying to memorize every word he'd written. "He loved you," Dorian said quietly. "Everything he did because he loved you." "I know," Camilla whispered. "I just wish I'd known sooner. Wish we'd had more time." "My wife and I thought we'd have more time too," Dorian said. "We always think we'll have more time. That's why the moments we get matter so much." In the back seat, Camilla finally folded the letter carefully and put it back in her jacket, in the same pocket where it had waited to be discovered. "Riverton," she said softly, "where my father left his final gift. Where this all ends, one way or another." The drive to Riverton took nearly 5 hours on back roads. They stopped twice, once for gas at a small station where Russell paid cash, and once so Dorian could call Mrs. Caldwell from a payphone. "How's Penny?" he asked, his voice tight with the accumulated stress of the past days. "She's perfect, dear. We're making cookies again today. She asks about you constantly, but I keep her distracted." Mrs. Caldwell's voice softened. "Are you safe?" "Getting there. Should be home soon. I'll keep her as long as you need. Just come home, Dorian." Before they reached Riverton's outskirts, Dorian made another call, this one to Bruno. "Brother, where have you been?" Bruno's concern was immediate. "Those men came by again, asking questions." "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. Said you went to visit family out of state. But Dorian, they're not messing around. One of them showed me a picture of a woman, asked if I'd seen her. What did you say?" "That I hadn't, but they're watching your house. Mrs. Caldwell's too, probably." Dorian's chest tightened. "Keep Penny inside. Don't let her near any windows. I'll explain everything when I get back. Just tell me you're doing the right thing." "I am. I promise." They met Agent Frost and Wesley at an abandoned warehouse on Riverton's industrial edge. Frost had acquired new equipment, tactical vests, communication devices, and detailed layouts of Preston Whitmore's office building and the bank. "I've been making calls," Frost said, "spreading the papers on the hood of the truck. Preston Whitmore is legitimate, been Dr. Sutton's lawyer for 15 years. But here's the problem. His office is in downtown Riverton, 4th floor of a building with only 2 exits. The bank with the safety deposit box is 3 blocks away. Both locations are exposed, and if Meridian's people are watching, they are," Russell said with certainty. "Question is how many and how well armed." They studied the building layouts in the fading afternoon light. Dorian found himself checking his watch repeatedly, thinking of Penny, wondering how much longer this would take. "We need to separate the objectives," Russell said, his tactical mind working. "Someone retrieves the evidence from the lawyer's office. Someone else secures the safety deposit box. We don't put all our eggs in one approach." "I'll go to Whitmore's office," Camilla said. "He's expecting me, or at least expecting Dr. Sutton's daughter eventually." "Not alone," Dorian said immediately. "I'll go with her," Agent Frost offered. "Official FBI presence might make Meridian think twice about trying anything in a lawyer's office. Or it might make them desperate," Russell countered. "Desperate people do stupid, violent things." They debated strategy for another hour, weighing risks and options. Finally, they settled on a plan. Frost and Camilla would approach Whitmore's office during business hours. More witnesses, harder to make a move. Dorian and Russell would position themselves with sightlines on both exits, ready to intervene if things went wrong. Wesley, still nursing his shoulder wound, would stay with the vehicles, monitoring police scanners and acting as their early warning system. "What about after we get the evidence?" Camilla asked. "Where do we go?" "I've arranged a meeting with a journalist," Frost said. "Someone I trust absolutely. Former investigative reporter who now works for a major network. Once we hand over the evidence, both sets, it goes public within hours. After that, Meridian can't touch you. The truth protects you." As evening approached, they moved into position. Dorian found himself on a rooftop across from Whitmore's building, Russell beside him with binoculars. "You thinking about Penny?" Russell asked quietly. "Always. Good father worries. Bad father doesn't." Russell lowered the binoculars. You know what you did for that girl down there, for Camilla, is what I hope somebody would do for my kid, if I had one. I just opened my door. No. You put yourself between danger and someone who needed help. That's not nothing, brother. That's everything. Below them, they watched Frost and Camilla enter the building. Dorian's hand moved to the weapon at his side. Russell's fixed-blade knife, the one that had saved his friend's life years ago in Afghanistan. Brought this back like I promised, Dorian said, offering it. Keep it. Might need it before this is over. Russell's expression was serious. I've got a bad feeling about this, Dorian. Something's off. Everything's been off since this started. No, I mean something specific. Look at that sedan, third spot from the corner. Dorian followed his gaze. The black vehicle sat with its engine running, windows tinted dark. They're here, Russell confirmed. Question is, are they waiting for her to come out, or are they going in? The answer came minutes later, when 4 men in suits entered the building. They moved with purpose, and Dorian recognized the controlled efficiency of trained operatives. We need to warn them, Dorian said, reaching for his phone. Before he could dial, Russell grabbed his arm. Wait, look at the back exit. 2 more men positioning themselves to cover the rear. It was a coordinated operation, and Frost and Camilla were walking into it blind. Now we move, Russell said, already heading for the roof access. And we move fast. They descended the stairs 3 at a time, weapons ready, knowing they had minutes, maybe seconds, before violence erupted in the heart of downtown Riverton. Dorian thought of Penny, of the promise he'd made to come home, and prayed he could keep it. Above them, through the windows of Preston Whitmore's 4th-floor office, Camilla was about to discover that some traps are impossible to avoid. No matter how carefully you plan, Dorian and Russell burst through the building's front entrance just as screams erupted from the 4th floor. Office workers scattered, fleeing toward the exits as the sound of breaking glass echoed through the stairwell. Go! Go! Russell shouted, taking the stairs 2 at a time. They reached the 4th floor to find the hallway in chaos. Preston Whitmore's office door hung open, splintered where it had been forced. Inside, furniture was overturned, papers scattered everywhere. Agent Frost stood with her weapon drawn, positioning herself between Camilla and 3 men in tactical gear. Federal agent, Frost shouted. Stand down. The lead operative, tall, cold-eyed, with the bearing of former military, didn't flinch. Hand over the woman and the evidence. Nobody else needs to get hurt. Not happening, Frost said. The operative's hand moved toward his weapon, and everything happened at once. Russell's rifle cracked, the shot taking out the overhead light and plunging half the office into shadow. Dorian rushed forward, tackling Camilla behind Whitmore's heavy oak desk as bullets tore through the space where she'd been standing. Frost fired twice, hitting one operative in the shoulder. He went down hard, and his partners scrambled for cover. Russell moved with the fluid precision of combat experience, using the doorframe for cover while laying down, suppressing fire. The back office. Preston Whitmore, a grey-haired man in his 60s, shouted from behind an overturned filing cabinet. There's a service exit! Camilla clutched a leather briefcase to her chest. Whitmore must have already given her the documents. Dorian grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back of the office, keeping low as bullets punched holes in the walls above them. They reached a narrow hallway lined with file boxes. At the end, a metal door marked "Emergency Exit Offered Escape." But as Dorian pushed it open, he saw 2 more operatives rushing up the back stairs. They've got both exits covered, he said, slamming the door shut and looking for something to barricade it with. Russell appeared beside them, breathing hard. Frost is holding the front. We need another way out. The windows, Whitmore gasped, appearing from the chaos. There's a fire escape on the east side. They ran to the corner office, and Dorian shattered the window with a chair. The fire escape was rusted but intact, zigzagging down to the alley 4 floors below. Ladies first, Russell said, helping Camilla through the window. Gunfire erupted again. The operatives had breached the back door. Whitmore climbed through next, surprisingly agile for his age, followed by Dorian. Russell provided covering fire, then swung through the window just as bullets sparked off the metal frame. They descended rapidly, feet clanging on metal grates. Below, Dorian saw Agent Frost emerge from the building's back door, Wesley limping beside her. Both were bloodied but moving. "The bank!" Camilla shouted. "We still need the safety deposit box." "No time," Russell said. "We need to—" A black SUV screeched around the corner, cutting off their escape route. More operatives poured out, and suddenly they were trapped in the alley with enemies on both sides. Dorian looked around desperately. An overflowing dumpster sat against one wall. Beyond it, a narrow gap between buildings, barely wide enough for a person. "There," he said, pointing. They scrambled over the dumpster as bullets pinged off metal around them. The gap was tight, forcing them to turn sideways and shuffle through. Dorian's heart hammered as he heard footsteps behind them, their pursuers giving chase. They emerged into a crowded marketplace, vendors selling produce, shoppers browsing stalls. The sudden shift from violence to normalcy was disorienting. Dorian grabbed Camilla's arm and pulled her into the crowd, using the confusion to their advantage. "Split up," Frost ordered quickly. "Meet at the secondary location. Go!" Dorian and Camilla ducked into a shop selling electronics, moving quickly through to the back exit. Behind them, they heard shouting as the operatives tried to follow through the marketplace crowd. "The briefcase," Dorian said as they ran. "What's in it?" "Everything," Camilla gasped. "Recorded confessions, financial records showing the bribes, names of everyone involved. My father documented everything." They emerged onto a side street. Dorian spotted a taxi and flagged it down desperately. "Drive," he told the confused driver, shoving cash into his hand. "Just drive, away from downtown." As the taxi pulled into traffic, Dorian looked back through the rear window. Russell and Frost had made it to separate vehicles. But 3 black SUVs were now in pursuit, weaving through traffic with dangerous speed. "They're not giving up," Camilla said, her voice shaking. "Neither are we," Dorian replied, his mind racing through options. His phone buzzed, a text from Russell. "Lead them to the industrial park. East side. I know the terrain." Dorian showed the driver the address and offered more cash. The man nodded and accelerated, though his hands trembled on the wheel. Behind them, the chase continued through Riverton's streets, heading toward whatever final confrontation awaited in the abandoned warehouses at the city's edge. The industrial park was a graveyard of failed businesses, rusted machinery, broken windows and weeds reclaiming concrete. The taxi driver refused to go further, dropping them at the entrance before speeding away. Dorian and Camilla ran between buildings as the black SUVs roared into the complex behind them. Russell's truck appeared from a side street, sliding to a stop beside them. "Get in!" Russell shouted. They jumped into the truck bed as Russell accelerated, navigating the maze of warehouses with practiced ease. Agent Frost's vehicle joined them from another direction, Wesley driving, while Frost leaned out the window with her weapon ready. "They're boxing us in," Camilla shouted over the engine noise. Russell whipped around a corner into a large warehouse with open loading bays on both ends. He hit the brakes hard, and the truck spun to face the entrance. "Out, now!" Russell commanded. They scrambled from the vehicles and took defensive positions. Dorian found himself behind a concrete pillar, Russell's knife in one hand and the pistol in the other. He'd never imagined using either, but desperation had transformed him. The black SUVs entered from both ends, engines echoing in the cavernous space. Men poured out, 8 of them now, heavily armed and coordinated. They spread out systematically, cutting off escape routes. The lead operative, the same cold-eyed man from the office, stepped forward. "There's nowhere left to run. Hand over the evidence, and the woman and the rest of you walk away." "His name is Fletcher," Agent Frost shouted from her position. "Former Delta Force dishonorable discharge. Now he murders people for money." Fletcher's jaw tightened. "I do what needs to be done. Just like in the service." "You kill innocent people," Camilla said, her voice strengthening with anger. "My father was trying to save lives, and you murdered him." "Dr. Sutton was a problem that needed solving," Fletcher replied coldly. "Just like you." Nothing personal, Dorian felt rage building in his chest. This man had killed Camilla's father, had threatened Penny by extension, had turned lives into problems to be solved. "It's very personal," Dorian said, stepping out from cover. Dorian, don't, Russell started. But Dorian was already moving. Fletcher raised his weapon, but Russell's shot rang out first, hitting the concrete at Fletcher's feet. The operative dove for cover, and chaos erupted. Gunfire filled the warehouse, sharp cracks and ricochets echoing off metal. Dorian charged forward, using the confusion, getting close where Fletcher's rifle became a liability. They collided hard, both men going down. Fletcher was trained and deadly, but Dorian fought with the desperation of a father who needed to get home to his daughter. They grappled on the concrete, and Dorian felt ribs crack under Fletcher's strikes. Pain exploded through his body, but he held on. Russell's knife was in Dorian's hand now, and he drove it toward Fletcher's shoulder, not to kill, but to disable. Fletcher twisted, and the blade scraped across his vest. They rolled, and suddenly Fletcher had Dorian pinned. "You're just a mechanic," Fletcher hissed. "Playing hero." But heroes die. A gunshot cracked, and Fletcher jerked. He looked down in disbelief at the blood blooming on his side. Behind him, Camilla stood with Frost's backup pistol, her hands shaking but her aim true. "That's for my father," she said. Fletcher collapsed, and Dorian scrambled away, gasping for breath. Around the warehouse, the fight was ending. Russell and Frost had neutralized the other operatives with tactical precision. Some were down, others fleeing, realizing their mission had failed. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Frost had called them in, finally bringing official law enforcement to a situation that had spiraled far beyond corporate espionage. Dorian crawled to where Camilla stood frozen, still holding the gun. He gently took it from her hands. "It's over," he said. "You're safe now." She collapsed into his arms, sobbing with relief and grief and the weight of everything she'd survived. Around them, the warehouse fell silent except for groans of injured operatives and the approaching sirens. Russell appeared, helping Dorian to his feet. "You fought well, brother." "I fought desperately," Dorian corrected, wincing at his injured ribs. Sometimes that's the same thing. Agent Frost was already on her phone, coordinating with the arriving officers, ensuring they understood the situation. Preston Whitmore emerged from where he'd taken cover, the briefcase with Dr. Sutton's evidence still clutched in his arms. "Is it really over?" Camilla asked, looking at the chaos around them. "The fighting is," Frost said. "Now comes justice. With the evidence we have, both the USB drive and your father's complete files, we can prosecute everyone involved. Meridian executives, corrupt FDA officials, the congressional representatives who took bribes. All of them. Police vehicles poured into the industrial park, lights flashing. Frost showed her credentials and began explaining the situation to the officers. Wesley surrendered himself immediately, accepting responsibility for his role in compromising the investigation. Dorian sat on the ground, his back against Russell's truck, watching emergency personnel tend to the injured. His body ached, his hands were scraped and bleeding, but he was alive. He pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Caldwell. "I'm coming home," he said when she answered. "Tell Penny I'm coming home." "Thank God," Mrs. Caldwell breathed. "Oh, thank God." Camilla sat beside him, her father's evidence secured, her nightmare finally ending. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Dorian looked at the sunset painting the sky beyond the warehouse. "Now we heal. We testify. We make sure your father's sacrifice meant something. And after that," Dorian thought of his small house, of Penny waiting for him, of the quiet life he'd built from loss. But he also thought of Camilla, alone in the world, and the bond forged through shared danger. "After that," he said gently, "we figure out how to move forward. Together, if you'd like." She nodded, tears sliding down her face. "I'd like that very much." 3 weeks later, morning light filtered through the kitchen windows of Dorian's home, but the atmosphere had transformed completely. The smell of pancakes filled the air, chocolate chip, as always. But now there were 2 people at the stove, instead of 1. Camilla stood beside Dorian, helping him flip pancakes, while Penny set the table with careful precision. The 8-year-old had adapted to their new guest with remarkable ease, treating Camilla with a mixture of curiosity and affection that had grown steadily since she'd moved into the spare room. "Did you know that black holes can bend light?" Penny asked Camilla, continuing a conversation about space that had been ongoing for days. I did, Camilla replied, smiling. Your dad told me you're going to be an astronaut someday. Maybe, or maybe a scientist like you were. Penny looked up at her with serious eyes. Dad says you helped sick people get better. That's important too. Camilla's expression softened with emotion. She told Penny a simplified version of what happened, that bad people had tried to hide mistakes that hurt patients, and that she and Dorian had worked to make sure the truth came out. Penny had listened with the solemn understanding of a child who'd already learned that life held both darkness and light. The news played softly on the television in the living room. The anchor's voice drifted into the kitchen. In continuing coverage of the Meridian Pharmaceuticals scandal, federal prosecutors announced today that 12 executives, 3 FDA officials, and 2 congressional representatives have been indicted on charges ranging from fraud to manslaughter. The families of the 47 victims are expected to receive substantial settlements. Dorian turned down the volume. They'd testified extensively over the past weeks, given depositions, met with prosecutors, relived the terror of those days on the run. But now it was over, at least the immediate part. The trials would take months, maybe years, but the evidence was overwhelming. A knock at the door revealed Russell carrying a toolbox. He'd been coming by regularly, helping Dorian install better security systems and spending time with Penny, who'd adopted him as a surrogate uncle. Morning, folks, Russell said, accepting a cup of coffee from Dorian. Came to finish that lock on the back door. You don't have to keep doing this, Dorian said. I know, but I want to. Russell glanced at Camilla. How are you holding up? Better, she said honestly. Some days are harder than others, but she gestured around the warm kitchen. Being here helps. Mrs. Caldwell arrived next with fresh bread, her sharp eyes taking in the domestic scene with obvious approval. She'd known from the beginning that Camilla would stay. Had seen it in the way Dorian looked at her, not romantically, not yet, but with the careful protectiveness of someone who'd opened his heart to the possibility of family again. Bruno showed up as they were finishing breakfast, joining them at the now crowded table. Place is getting lively, he observed with a grin. Remember when it was just you and Penny, brother? Quiet as a church. I remember, Dorian said. But his tone suggested he didn't miss it. After breakfast, while the others cleaned up, Dorian found Camilla on the front porch, staring at the street where she'd first stumbled through his door weeks ago. Thinking about that night? He asked. Always. How different everything could have been if you'd closed your door. She turned to him. Why didn't you? Dorian thought about Annie, about the promises he'd made to be a man worthy of her love, about the values he wanted to teach Penny through actions rather than words, because Annie used to say that love is an action, not just a feeling. And I think compassion works the same way. You don't just feel it, you do it, even when it's hard, even when it's scary. Camilla nodded, understanding. I've been thinking about the foundation, the Bernard Sutton Memorial Fund. I want to do more than just give money to victims' families. I want to fund research integrity programs, support whistleblowers, make sure what my father exposed actually changes things. He'd be proud of that. Of you. I hope so. She pulled out the photograph, cleaned now, no longer blood-stained, showing her and Dr. Sutton in the laboratory. I never got to tell him I understood, that I forgave him. He knew, Dorian said gently. A father always knows when his child loves him. Russell appeared on the porch with Penny, who was carrying a camera. Mrs. Caldwell says we need a proper family photo. Says the one on your mantel is too old. They gathered on the porch, Dorian, Penny, Camilla, Russell, Mrs. Caldwell, and Bruno. Not a traditional family, but family nonetheless. Bound by shared struggle and genuine affection, as Russell set up the camera on timer, Dorian felt something he hadn't experienced since Annie died. A sense of wholeness, of possibility, of life moving forward rather than just enduring. The camera flashed, capturing them all together, 6 people who'd found each other through crisis and chosen to remain together through healing. Later, as evening settled over Whitmore Falls, Dorian sat on the porch swing with Penny on one side and Camilla on the other. Russell and Mrs. Caldwell were talking in the yard, their laughter carrying on the warm air. Bruno's truck was pulling up the street, returning with ice cream he'd promised to bring. Dorian pulled out his leather journal and wrote, "Annie, something remarkable happened. I opened my door to a stranger and found something I didn't know I was missing. Camilla has become part of our lives, teaching Penny about science, bringing laughter back to this house, reminding me that family isn't just what you're born into. It's what you choose, what you fight for, what you build from courage and compassion. I understand now what you meant about love being an action. We saved each other, Camilla and I, and in the process, I learned that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they listen to the better angels of their nature. I think you'd like her. Annie, I think you'd approve of the man I've become, the father I'm trying to be, the life we're building here. I miss you every day. But I'm learning to live again, not just exist. And I have you to thank for teaching me that love doesn't end. It transforms, it expands, it continues in every choice we make to open our hearts. Thank you for Penny. Thank you for the years we had. Thank you for showing me what it means to be good. All my love, always, Dorian." He closed the journal and looked at the new photograph Russell had placed on the mantel beside Annie's picture. Both images represented love. Both represented family. Both reminded him that life, even when broken, could be rebuilt into something beautiful. The screen door opened, and Penny called out, "Dad! Bruno's here with ice cream." Dorian stood, offered his hand to Camilla, and together they went inside, into warmth, into laughter, into the continuing story of a life rebuilt from ashes, one open door at a time.